welcome! This is Brand New West Live in the Vin Library, and today, hey look, we have a spreadsheet. That's not what we're doing today. What we're actually doing is that the spreadsheet? Yeah. What we're actually doing is reading Pride and Prejudice today. However, we do have a little bit of bookkeeping to do with my 10,000 books, because I've read things this week. Yay! But hello everyone, before we do that, spreadsheet reading! Oh heck yeah. Hello Void! Hello Normal Size Phantom! Hello Luke! Hello Red Candy Guy! Hello Void again, but on Twitch! Hello Jump Hop! Hello Lucas, welcome! Here she comes, walking down the street. If you say you don't like tea, then just chop up with your feet. I appreciate that. It's a wonderful intro. Haven't actually drank much tea in my life because how gullible you are. Yes, you've been taken in by the coffee lie, so that's how you be. We're not doing 5-minute intro streams anymore. We should be. My problem is I start doing something while I'm waiting for the 5-minute mark, and then I lose track of time, and then I'm like, shit, we're at 6 minutes. And yeah, that's kind of the only reason that happens. Hi! Hello, IONG, welcome. So something's wrong with your YouTube? Fat, you try to figure that. See, my question went through, but I wasn't able to get back onto the video. Oh, that's poopy. I'm good. That's how I am. I'm good. Yeah, it's really easy. I don't know. I have like my crochet or something like that, and I'm just crocheting a little before the stream, you know, just waiting for time, and then blah, boom. Do I know the Toho? No, not very well, to be honest. I know of Bad Apple. That is a Toho song, right? And that's about all the Toho I know. Right, let's do some bookkeeping. So I read some books this week. I read a book called They Call Me Princess Case, and it was a novel. It was a fantasy indie novel by a person called P.D. Ball, and it is a series. It wasn't even coffee a lie. It was someone in elementary school telling me my teeth will fall out if I drink tea. Absolute thingy. Princess Chase. Yeah, Princess Chase. Have you read on Wattpad? No, I haven't really read anything on Wattpad, really, to be honest. If I want my fan fiction, I'm going to AO3 or fanfic.net, really, not Wattpad. But I read that. That's good. There'll be a review of that out on Wednesday, and I probably will be chopping my way through that series. We also had the SCP stream for members and Patreon, so here's the SCPs I read. Let's just put the caps lock on first. SCP dash, oh lord, there's gonna be lots of numbers. I'm also gonna press the 9 button, which is gonna mute me, so that's gonna be fun. 3843 SCP series. I'll just put the SCP, the things I need capitals for first. SCP 2 9 57 SCP 0 9 6 SCP 0 6 9 SCP 999 9 La 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 la. There's some that I have written which are short story. Cool! I have no context for Toho though, so SCP 660 SCP 504. That was the tomatoes, they were funny. SCP 173 and SCP, wait, no, SCP 173 and SCP 904. Yay! So those are all the things I read this week. They're all SCP. These are short story. And 158. I don't know if I've read 158 yet. And I class the SCPs as a series. So let's see what number we're up to. Da-na-na-na. We're not 112. That's not how this works. It's supposed to go up each time. Why is that? That is not how it should be. These are all going to get deleted now. There we go. And then this gets down to this. 122. So I have to apologize before we go. See your eyes. Shush, shush, you know what I mean. I have to apologize because there is a certain very popular football match going on today, and I do happen to live near a drinking hole of such, where there may be a lot of noise. You may be able to hear chanting, screaming, etc. from the background, and my window is closed, but you can still hear them sometimes. But that puts me at 122. So 10,000 take 122. That brings us on to 9,878. So let's update our numbers before we start. 1,878. Boom! Okay, give that a quick save. No, don't select all, just save. And we can get to Pride and Prejudice. Now, some of you have chats that I missed while I was doing numbers. And 158. I didn't know. Did I read 158? I loved bringing up 3843. I loved imagining Bryony as Drader, who'd definitely steamroll me in a battle royale. Drader would steamroll most people in a battle royale as long as they've not got really stupid powers. I want to be taught how to write comics before drawing the fan minific. You don't have to be taught how to do anything. Just do it and see if you can do it. And then, once you've done it, figure out what you've done wrong and then look up things on the internet to help you. Mechanical arm, I see. What a surprise. Would you be interested in reading it? It's not really Toho related. Is it original work, so not Toho related? You could send it my way, and I could have a quick scan through and see if it's something I could look at. Oh boy, the footy, indubitably the footy be going on. It's coming. I'm so sick of that song. Every time I've been in work, it's coming out. It's coming out. It's coming. Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. I gotta poke a bit of fun at you for grammatical problems, I must. It's fine. It is important to do so. I love the version of football where you tackle each other, grab the non-ball, and honestly rarely use your foot outside running. I know, that's a wild version of football. It is really weird. Brandon, guess what? You're cool. No, yo! A drinking hole, what does that mean? It's a pub. It's a pub. I'm talking about a pub. You saying you live by a bunch of sport fan dads and that eat Ruffles and watch the game while being really loud and excited? No, I mean a pub. Also, we don't have Ruffles here. What the fuck is a Ruffle? I'm guessing it's kind of crisps. And by crisps, I mean chips. Yeah, it's original. Well, if you wanna, if you're in the Discord, you can put it into the, I think there's reading suggestions section. If you want to put it in there, that'd be great. A pup. No, a pub. B-U-B. B-U-B? No. P-U-B. Pub. By the way, you've acquired Glorious Pizza. Lovely. Hello, Emmanuel Cooper. Welcome. And no, you. A bub. A bub. The drinking bub. Anyway, we ain't here to talk about the football hooligans. We are here to talk about Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth and how they're going to get together, even though Mr. Darcy is so antisocial. You know, he sat next to a woman in a party and didn't say anything and didn't have any conversations with anyone, like I totally would. Oh, Brady, you don't even know about the Super Bowl, so you don't even know how excited people... Void. You don't know what football means over here. You don't know what it gets like when England plays a match. Even worse that it's the finals right now. Like, don't even go there. What? Gifted! Gift memberships! Oh, thank you, Emmanuel Cooper. Thank you so much. Congrats to anyone who just got the gifty memberships. Oh, look at this. Look at you guys getting memberships. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. Well done, everyone. Howdy Crusader got a membership. Wonderful. Football or football? Football! Footy! The football. You know what you guys weirdly called soccer, when football is the greatest description of it. You know, you hit football with foot. Done. Look at you guys. You're all members now. Thank you. It's similar in Germany. We do not patriotism till soccer time, then it all comes out. It really do. It really, that is what it's like. Also, quick, thingy. If anyone would be willing, I know you start, if anyone would be willing to jump over to Twitch, to watch this, I would be really appreciative, because we are still close to getting that affiliate, but we need to keep the views up to 3 views. So if anyone's willing to hop over, that would be lovely. Admittedly, a lot of you just got membership, and you probably want to use your nice new emotes, so I understand if you don't want to, but I'd appreciate it. But 22 members, look at them! Look at them still going, wah! Normal size fandom, holy shit, you're in a different chat now. I call it soccer because I'm Americans. Yeah, you weirdos. A lot of people call it soccer, and you know what? That's the Americans' bloody fault. You're goddamn awful. It should all be called footy, and no one should be calling it like thingy. It's stupid. It's stupid. Look at you all getting memberships. It's still going. Anyway. Let's recap some Pride and Prejudice. This ain't about the footy. This ain't about the footy. This ain't about it. That ain't about that stupid ball. Luckily, I was already a member, so I got all these emotes all the time. Squeeze the tiny finger. Okay. So, Elizabeth's daddy introduced the family to a... I can't remember the names. Let's get like some text up, and then maybe I'll remember what the names are. But anyway, there's this guy called Mr. Darcy, and he's a bit of a jackass compared to everyone else. He does not know the social norms, and because of that, everyone thinks he's... Oh yes, Mr. Bingley, that was it. Mr. Bingley moved into town, and Elizabeth's mother was like, oh my gosh, we can get the girls married to him. So they went to a party, and Mr. Bingley brought his friend, Mr. Darcy. And Mr. Darcy was quite rude to Miss Elizabeth. She was in earshot when Mr. Darcy said that she was tolerable. It was absolutely horrendous. Also, thank you guys for popping over the Twitch. Appreciate it. Can't wait to get a blip sound effect. And so I can hear... Is it still... I tried to make it blip for me. Like, I sorted out the alerts and stuff, but it still didn't work for me blipping wise. It's very annoying. I would like to hear the blips. But oh well. I guess you guys can just hear the blips. Blip, 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 blip. But that's crazy. So many members. Heck yeah. Enjoy your emotes. And then... So, her sister Jane, Mr. Bingley has taken a liking to Elizabeth's sister Jane. So, her mother, being something of a wing woman, sent Jane over to Mr. Bingley's estate on a horse, knowing that it would rain. And unfortunately, Miss Jane got caught in the rain and is now very ill. So, now... Elizabeth was very determined to go visit her, but her father would not allow her to use any of the horses. So she trudged a few miles distance all the way to Mr. Bingley's estate to see her sister. And now she is all a bit muddy and has seen her sister. And her sister is okay. She's just a bit under the weather because of the cold. And now the apothecary came to see the sister. And that's about what we're up to. That's about it. Family. This one is all. It's all family drama nonsense, and it's great. A bunch of roaches ate my entire eye and mine, and I am very annoyed. You have to burn their families? Good luck with that. Have fun. And then, when breakfast was over, they were joined by the sisters, and Elizabeth began to like them herself, when she saw how much affection and solitude they shown for Jade. And solicitude? Solicitude, not solitude. The apothecary came, and having examined his patient, said, as might be supposed, that she had caught a violent cold, and that they must endeavour to get the better of it, advised her to return to bed, and promised her some draughts. The advice was followed readily, for the feverish symptoms increased, and her head ached acutely. Elizabeth did not quit her room for a moment, nor were the other ladies often absent. The gentlemen being out, they had, in fact, nothing to do elsewhere. When the clock struck 3, Elizabeth felt that she must go, and very unwillingly said so. Miss Bingley offered her the carriage, and she only wanted a little pressing to accept. When Jane testified such concern at parting with her that Miss Bingley was obliged to convert the offer of the chassis to an invitation to remain at the Netherfield estate for the present, Elizabeth most thankfully consented, and a servant was dispatched to Longbourn to acquaint the family with her stay and bring back a supply of clothes. So, now she's staying at the Netherfield estate, where Mr. Darcy is also staying. How very interesting. A headache, you say? Why, we must balance her humours most hurriedly. Quickly now, we must remove this terribly bad blood at once. So on Twitch, you need to keep 3 viewers at once consistently to stay monetized. Not to stay monetized, to get monetized in the first place. Basically, one of the things you need to get affiliate on Twitch is average of 3 views on your streams, which is the only thing I'm missing at the moment. I don't think you have to keep it to stay monetized, though, as far as I know. A covering screen. I love these illustrations. They're so cute. Look at this. It's pretty. At 5 o'clock, the 2 ladies retired to dress. And at 6:30, Elizabeth was summoned to dinner. To the civil inquiries which then poured in, and amongst which she had the pleasure of distinguishing the much superior solitude of Mr. Bingley. Solicitude! Solicitude! I keep reading solitude. Solicitude is solitude. Pretty. It is pretty. You don't. Once you are affiliate, you stay affiliate. Wonderful! Then I won't have to keep pressuring you guys to be on Twitch after that. You can be Twitch of your own free will. She could not make a very fashionable answer. Jane was by no means better. The sisters, on hearing this, repeated 3 or 4 times how much they were grieved, how shocking it was to have a bad cold, and how excessively they disliked being ill themselves, and then thought no more of the matter, and their indifference towards Jane, when not immediately before them, restored Elizabeth to the enjoyment of all her original dislike. I see. Bright, honestly, in my opinion, your chibi would fit the reading if possible. She able to sit in a chair? No! I will stay like this! And I want to be chibi right now. Their brother, indeed, was the only one of the party whom she could regard with any complacency. His anxiety for Jane was evident, and his attentions to herself most pleasing, and they prevented her feeling herself so much an intruder, as she believed she was considered by the others. She had very little notice from any but him. Miss Bingley was engrossed by Mr. Darcy, her sister scarcely so, and for Mr. Hurst, by whom Elizabeth sat, he was an indolent man, who lived to eat, drink, and play at cards, who when he found her prefer a plain dish to a ragout, and nothing to say to her. Oh lord, this can be quite tricky. After that, I can just buy 100 to 500 or so bits daily, so just to get it up to 150k bits. I mean, I guess you can do that if you want. Yeah, you'd never be able to get through a single chapter without us trying to eat you in chibi form. Yeah, I don't need that right now. So I can drop it on you whenever I feel like good. Yeah, I guess that's a plan. Actually, now that I think about it, Chibi Bri can be layered so it looks like she's standing on the chapter. But then how can you, like, read it? Or leaning against it? I don't, she could, I guess, but it would look a bit weird because she'd be, like, at a weird angle. Hey! Twitch is at 2 viewers, guys! Someone get over there now! I like basic Brainy on Tiny Bee. I like basic me better. It's only it's okay when it's Higurashi. Yeah, well, it's Higurashi. We kind of need that bereavement, honestly. Sure, just let me clone myself. Yeah, get on it. Get on that cloning. Get out there. I am gonna get frickin' affiliate somehow, some way. I don't think I can watch it on my phone. I don't think that would work. Maybe it will. 1 second. La 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 la. Twitch.tv/me. There we go. I watch myself mute. I don't think it'll count, but we'll do it anyway. Let's get partner. I would love to get partner, but you know, one goal at a time. Well, 2 goals at a time, because we have affiliate and we have 5k. Those are 2 very important goals. Anyway. When dinner was over, she returned directly to Jane, and Miss Bingley began abusing her as soon as she was out of the room. Her manners were pronounced to be very bad indeed, a mixture of pride and impertinence. She had no conversation, no style, no taste, no beauty. Mrs. Hurst thought the same and added, "She has nothing, in short, to recommend her, but being an excellent walker. I shall never forget her appearance this morning. She looked almost wild. Oh my." Well then, people, chop chop, head over to the Twitch dungeon. We'll be allowed to leave once Brownie's village. Yes, that's correct. The Twitch dungeon. You're all locked in there now. Damn, something talking about me. No, they're being very mean to Elizabeth. Come now, don't make her bring out the guns. Go to Twitch. Go to Twitch, I dare you. She did, indeed, Louisa. I could hardly keep my countenance. Very nonsensical to come at all. Why must she be scampering about the country because her sister has a cold? Her hair so untidy, so blowsy. Yes, and her petticoat. I hope you saw her petticoat, 6 inches deep in mud. I am absolutely certain that the gown which had been let down to hide it not doing its office. Your picture may be very exact, Louisa, said Bingley, but this was all lost upon me. I thought Miss Elizabeth Bennet looked remarkably well when she came into the room this morning. Her dirty petticoat quite escaped my notice. You observed it, Mr. Darcy, I am sure, said Miss Bingley, and I am inclined to think that you would not wish to see your sister make such an exhibition. Certainly not. To walk 3 miles, or 4, or 5 miles, or whatever it is, above her ankles in dirt, and alone, quite alone. What could she mean by it? It seems to me to show an abominable sort of conceited independence, a most country town indifference to decorum. Oh my, how dare she? Oh no, how tragic. Hey Brian, have a new gun. Another gun! Yay! We have a tank! Don't worry, the gun is made out of chocolate. It's fine. I have a tank now. Now the story is making Brian looking into a crystal ball. What if you could see Briny in the crystal ball? I don't know. Have a lovely luck, Luke. I hope I get a flight too. Thank you. You're cool. You're also very cool. And you have fun streams too. Boo. Like a past reincarnation plot. That'd be wild. I literally forgot you were you were a dinosaur boy. The whole switched up PFP actually worked. You can have a whole new identity with just a new PFP. It's wild. Tank made out of toffee though. Ooh, tasty. It shows an affection for her sister that is very pleasing, said Bingley. I am afraid, Mr. Darcy, observed Miss Bingley in a half-whisper, that this adventure has rather affected your admiration of her fine eyes. Not at all, he replied. They were brightened by the exercise. A short pause followed his speech, and Mrs. Hurst began again. I have an excessive regard for Jane Bennet. She is really a very sweet girl, and I wish with all my heart that she were settled, but with such a father and mother, and such low connections, I am afraid there is no chance of it. I think I have heard you say that their uncle is an attorney at Meryton? Yes, and they have another, who lives somewhere near Cheapside. That is capital, said her sister, and they both laughed heartily. If they had uncles enough to fill all Cheapside, cried Bingley, it would not make them one jot less agreeable. But it must be very materially lessen their chance of marrying men of any consideration in the world, replied Darcy. To this speech Bingley made no answer, but his sisters gave it their hearty assent, and indulged their mirth for some time at the expense of their dear friend's vulgar retaliations. With a renewal of tenderness, however, they repaired to her room on leaving the dining parlour, and sat with her until summoned for coffee. She was still very poorly, and Elizabeth would not quit her at all, till late in the evening, when she had the comfort of seeing her asleep, and when it appeared her rather right than pleasant that she should go downstairs herself. On entering the drawing-room, she found the whole party at loo. At loo? They're in the loo? What? No, I know what loo means. Loo means they're calm. There was a pause, I guess. You dare insult my armoured vehicle, good sir? How rude. I don't insult, I eat. Eat then yeet. Anne was immediately invited to join them, but suspecting them to be playing high, she declined it, and making her sister the excuse she would amuse herself for a short time, she short time she could stay below with a book. Mr. Hurst looked at her with astonishment. "Do you prefer reading to playing cards?" said he. "That's rather singular." "Miss Eliza Bennet," said Miss Bingley, "despises cards. She is a great reader, and has no pleasure in anything else." "I deserve neither such praise nor such censure," cried Elizabeth. "I am not a great reader, and I have a pleasure in many things." "In nursing your sister, I'm sure you have pleasure," said Bingley, "and I hope it will soon be increased by seeing her quite well." Elizabeth thanked him from her heart, and then walked towards the table where a few books were lying. He immediately offered to fetch her others, all that his library afforded. "And I wish my collection were larger for your benefit and my own credit. But I am an idle fellow, and though I have not many, I have more than I ever looked into." "I bought books, but I didn't actually read them. That's very familiar." What do you think of this title, Bryony, and the pages of Alcatraz? Since it's a prison library, it makes sense. That's a pretty good title, honestly. That's a wonderful title. Elizabeth assured him that she could suit herself perfectly with those in the room. "I am astonished," said Miss Bingley, "that my father should have left so small a collection of books. What a delightful library you have at Pemberley, Mr. Darcy." "It ought to be good," he replied. "It has been the work of many generations. And then you have added so much to it yourself. You are always buying books. I cannot comprehend the neglect of a family library in such days as these." "Neglect? I am sure you neglect nothing that can add to the beauties of that noble place. Charles, when you built your house, I wish you may be half as delightful as Pemberley." "I wish it may. But I would really advise you to make your purchase in that neighbourhood, and take Pemberley for a kind of model. There is not a finer country in England than Derbyshire." Derbyshire! I was giving a programming book, but I never read it there. Programming books are dry as hell. If you're gonna learn programming, you need to do it by doing. "With all my heart I will buy Pemberley itself, if Darcy will sell it." "I am not talking of possibilities, Charles." "Upon my word, Caroline, I should think it more possible to get Pemberley by purchase than by invitation." Elizabeth was so much caught in what passed as to leave very little attention for the book, and soon laying it wholly aside, she drew near the card table and stationed herself between Bingley and his eldest sister to observe the game. "Is Miss Darcy much grown since the spring?" said Miss Bingley. "Will she be as tall as I am?" "Wait, does Darcy have a kid?" "I think she will. She will now about Miss Elizabeth Bennet's height, or rather taller. I guess no, maybe sister. It's true. Nothing, it really doesn't, especially with coding. How I longed to see her again. I never met with anybody who delighted me so much. Such a countenance, such manners, and so extremely accomplished for her age. Her performance on the pianoforte is exquisite." "It is amazing to me," said Bingley, "how young ladies can have practice to be so very accomplished at all they are." "All young ladies accomplished? My dear Charles, what do you mean?" "Yes, all of them, I think. They all paint tables, cover screens, and net purses. I scarcely know any one who cannot do all this, and I am sure I never heard a young lady spoken for the first time without being informed that she was very accomplished." "Your list of the common extent of accomplishments," said Darcy, "has too much truth. The word is applied to many women who deserve it, no otherwise than by netting a purse or covering a screen. But I am far from agreeing with you in your estimation of ladies in general. I cannot boast of knowing more than half a dozen in the whole range of my acquaintance that are really accomplished. One of them, Miss Bingley's just like, ladies are cool. Ladies could do so much shit. And Darcy's like, no. Ladies do basic things. Gah. Why would you call them all accomplished? Ugh. What a snob. You have a lot of practical experience in making bad dishes while cooking. That's a good practical experience. Then you know what not to do. I thought KG was bad. Yeah, Darcy's definitely worse than... Darcy is straight up fucking rude. He is absolutely straight up rude. Also, I love that they're, like, bitching about women and there's, like, 3 women in the room. You leave me no choice. You will be squished. No squish! Nor I am sure, said Miss Bingley. Then, observed Elizabeth, you must comprehend a great deal in your idea of an accomplished woman. Yes, I do comprehend a great deal in it. Oh, certainly, cried his faithful friend. No one can be really esteemed accomplished who does not greatly surpass what is usually met with. A woman must have a thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, dancing, and the modern languages to deserve the world. And, besides all this, she must possess a certain something in her air and manner of walking, the tone of her voice, her address, and expressions, or the world will be but half deserved. All this she must possess, added Darcy, and to all she must yet add something more substantial in the improvement of her mind by extensive reading. Jesus! A woman! I wish I could move my glasses so that we could just wiggle them a little bit. Must be perfect, they say. Fuck that, I say. Societal pressure, my bro. Well, Briny is a lady, and she's able to entertain me better than anyone else, pretty much. Wonderful! I'm good at something! You threatened to devour my tank, you must have been going. There's a war going on in the Twitch chat. And I'm rooting for the Polar Wolf. I'm sorry, Normal Size Phantom, but the Polar Wolf will constantly defend me, and you have tried to, like, consume me too many times. So, go to Polar Wolf. Go. Kick his ass. Oh, I am no longer surprised at your knowing only 6 accomplished women. I rather wonder now what you're knowing any. Are you so severe upon your own sex as to doubt the possibility of all of this? I never saw such a woman. I never saw such capacity and taste and application and elegance as you described united. Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley both cried out against the injustice of her implied doubt, and were both protesting that they knew many women who could answer this description, when Mr. Hurst called out to them to order, with bitter complaints of their inattention to what was going forward, as all conversation was thereby at an end. Elizabeth soon afterward left the room. Fuck yeah, Elizabeth. She's like, your standards are too high. And then the 2 other women in the room like, no, we know plenty of women like that. We're like that. How dare you? Nah. Let's not pretend we got perfection, ladies. Let's calm down. Elisa Bennet, said Miss Bingley when the door was closed on her, is one of those young ladies who seek to recommend themselves to the other sex by undervaluing their own. And with many men, I dare say, it succeeds, but, in my opinion, it is a paltry device. A very mean art. I love trying to translate this to modern in my head, and to me that says, Elizabeth's such a pick-me. Undoubtedly, replied Darcy, to whom this remark was chiefly addressed. There is meanness in all the arts which ladies sometimes consent to employ for captivation. Whatever bears affinity to cunning is despicable. Did it not occur to any of you that she didn't say that because she was trying to get a suitor? Anyone? No? Oh, this is wonderful. Miss Bingley was not entirely satisfied with his reply, as to continue the subject. Elizabeth joined them again, only to say that her sister was worse, and that she could not leave her. Bingley urged Mr. Jones being sent for immediately, while his sisters, convinced that no country advice could be of any service, recommend an express to town for one of the most eminent physicians. This she would not hear of, but she was not so unwilling to comply with their brother's proposal, and it was settled that Mr. Jones would be sent for early in the morning. If Mrs. Bennet were not decidedly better, Bingley was quite uncomfortable. His sisters declared that they were miserable, and they solaced their wretchedness, however, by duets after supper, while he could find no better relief to his feelings than giving his housekeeper directions that every possible attention might be paid to the sick lady and her sister. Your tanks are a vital part of being inserted into my mouth when they can battle hunger. Jeez. Your tanks are a vital component of the Tribute Defense Force. Yes, they are. I may have actually started the whole abuse eat chibi brownie thing, and for that I'm very proud. You're awful. You're absolutely awful. Ooh, pick me. Does anyone else volunteer to show your project to the class? Mrs. Bennet and her two youngest girls. I see. No wonder she's such a bitch. Elizabeth passed the chief of the night in her sister's room, and in the morning had the pleasure of being able to send a tolerable answer to the inquiries which she very early received from Mr. Bingley by a housemaid, and some time afterwards from the two elegant ladies who waited on his sisters. In spite of this amendment, however, she requested to have a note sent to Longbourn, desiring her mother to visit Jane, and form her own judgment of the situation. The note was immediately dispatched, and its contents was quickly complied with. Mrs. Bennet, accompanied by her two youngest girls, reached Netherfield soon after the family breakfast. Had she found Jane in any apparent danger, Mrs. Bennet would have been very miserable, but being satisfied on seeing that her illness was not alarming, she had no wish of her recovering immediately, as her restoration to health would probably remove her from Netherfield. She would not listen, therefore, to her daughter's proposal of being carried home. Neither did the apothecary, who arrived about the same time, think it all advisable. After sitting a while with Jane on Mrs. Bingley's appearance and invitation, the mother and three daughters all attended her into the breakfast parlour. Bingley met them with hopes that Mrs. Bennet had not found Miss Bennet worse than she expected. Indeed I have, sir, was her answer. She was a great deal too ill to be moved. Mr. Jones says we must not think of moving her. We must trespass a little longer on your kindness. Removed? Cried Bingley. It must not be thought of. My sister, I am sure, will not hear of her removal. You may depend on it, madam, said Miss Bingley, with a cold civility, that Miss Bennet shall receive every possible attention while she remains with us. Mrs. Bennet was profuse in her acknowledgments. I am sure, she added, if it was not for such good friends, I do not know what would become of her, for she is very ill indeed, and suffers a vast deal, though with the greatest patience in the world, which is always the way with her, for she has, without exception, the sweetest temper I ever met with. I often tell my other girls they are nothing to her. Jesus Christ, you often tell your other girls that they're nothing compared to your favourite child. You have a sweet room here, Mr. Bingley. Sweet! What? Sweet. Sorry, that tripped me up, because to me you got like, sweet, bro. So to hear a like old lady in a very old book calls something a sweet room, that sweet room, Mr. Bingley. Ah, I love it. I love it when language is strange like that. And a charming prospect over that gravel walk. I do not know a place in the country that is equal to Netherfield. You will not think of quitting it in a hurry. I hope, though, you have but a short lease. Yo, Mr. Bingley, bro, your room is buzzing. Buzzing. Terrible. Love it. What? Oh, sorry. Let's do a little burp. Whatever I do is done in a hurry, replied he, and therefore I should resolve to quit Netherfield. I should probably be off in 5 minutes. At present, however, I consider myself as quite fixed here. That is exactly what I should suppose of you, said Elizabeth. You began to comprehend me, do you? Cried he, turning towards her. Oh, yes, I understand you perfectly. I wish I might take this for a compliment, but to be so easily seen through, I'm afraid, is pitiful. That is as it happens. It does not necessarily follow that deep, intricate character is more or less estimable than one such as yours. Lizzie, cried her mother, remember where you are, and do not run on in the wild manner that you are suffered to do at the home. No one can stop Lizzie, no one. I actually thought that was from the book. Why would that be from the book? I did not know before, continued Bingley immediately, that you were a studier of character. It must be an amusing study. Yes, but intricate characters are the most amusing. They have at least that advantage. The country, said Darcy, can in general supply be few subjects for which a study in a county I think it's a county they're saying, not a country. County neighbourhood, you move in a very confined and unvarying society. But people themselves alter so much that there is something new to be observed in them forever. Yes, indeed, cried Mrs. Bennet, offended by his manner of mentioning a country neighbourhood. County neighbourhood, country neighbourhood? I can never tell which one it's supposed to be. I assure you there is quite as much of that going on in the country as in town. Everybody was surprised, and Darcy, after looking at her for a moment, turned silently away. Mrs. Bennet, who fancied she had gained a complete victory over him, continued her triumph. I cannot see that London has a great advantage over the country, for my part, except the shops and public places. The country is a vast deal pleasanter. Is not it, Mr. Bingley? When I am in the country, he replied, I never wish to leave it, and when I am in town, it is pretty much the same. They have each their advantages, and I can be equally happy in either. Aye, that is because you have the right disposition, but that gentleman, looking at Darcy, seems to think that the country was nothing at all. Indeed, mamma, you are mistaken, said Elizabeth, blushing for her mother. You quite mistook Mr. Darcy. He only meant that there was not such a variety of people to be met in the country as in the town, which you must acknowledge to be true. Victorian side-eye. Correct. Certainly, my dear, nobody said they were, but as to not meeting with many people in this neighbourhood, I believe there are few neighbourhoods larger. I know we dine with 24 families. Nothing. Wait 1 second. Sorry. I was trying to gauge the football hooligan sounds to see what was happening. I cannot, but I'm also curious about the football hooligan sounds. Nothing but concern for Elizabeth could enable Bingley to keep his countenance. His sister was less delicate and very direct, her eye towards Mr. Darcy with a very expressive smile. Elizabeth, for the sake of saying something that might turn her mother's thoughts, now asked her if Charlotte Lucas had been at Longbourn since her coming away. Yes, she called yesterday with her father. What an agreeable man Sir William is! Mr. Bingley, is not he? So much the man of fashion, so genteel and so easy. He has always something to say to everybody. That is my idea of good breeding. And those persons who fancy themselves very important and never open their mouths quite mistake the matter. Did Charlotte dine with you? No, she would go home. I fancy she was wanted about the mince pies. For my part, Mr. Bingley, I always keep servants that can do their own work. My daughters are brought up differently, but everybody is to judge for themselves. And the Lucases are a very good sort of girls, I assure you. It is a pity they are not handsome. Not that I think Charlotte is very plain, but when she is our particular friend. Talking about the neighbours' kids, like, and trying to shill your kids at the same time. Like, oh, well, they're lovely. Wait, but they're not that pretty. I mean, they're pretty, but they're not that pretty. I love also the women being called handsome in this. Handsome is like the standard word for a pretty woman in this, which is really funny because, like I said, it's a masculine term of beauty now, not a feminine one. So, oh, language. She seems a very pleasant young woman, said Bingley. Oh dear, yes, but you must own she's very plain. Lady Lucas herself has often said so, and envied me Jane's beauty. I do not like to boast of my own children. Yes, I do. I totally do, especially my favourite Jane. No one does. One does not often see anybody better looking. It is what everybody says. I do not trust my own particularity. When she was only 15, there was a gentleman at my brother's gardener's in town so much in love with her that my sister-in-law was sure he would make her an offer before he came away. But however, he did not. Perhaps he thought her too young. However, he wrote some verses on her, and very pretty they were. Also, everyone, there's only 2 on the Twitch again. Does anyone else want to get into Twitch? That would be lovely. Thank you. And so ended his affection, said Elizabeth impatiently. There has been many a one, I fancy, overcome in the same way. I wonder who first discovered the efficiency of poetry in driving away love. You gonna take a nap now? Have a wonderful nap. Have a wonderful nap. He wrote verses, he released a diss track about her, and it was a beautiful diss track. Very pretty diss tracks. Just keep typing, just keep typing, typing, typing. Just keep typing, Twitch won't think I'm not here. Yeah, I don't know why it does that. It's a very silly system sometimes, Twitch. Ba-ba-ba. I have been used to consider poetry as the food of love, said Darcy. Oh, a fine, stout, healthy love it may. Everything nourishes what is strong already, but if only a slight, thin sort of inclination, I am convinced that one good sonnet will starve it entirely away. Darcy only smiled, and the general pause which ensued made Elizabeth tremble, lest her mother should be exposing herself again. She longed to speak, but could think of nothing to say, and after a short silence, Mrs. Bennet began repeating her thanks to Mr. Bingley for his kindness to Jane, with an apology for troubling him, also with Lizzie. Mr. Bingley was unaffected by the civil in his answer, and forced his younger sister to be civil also, and say what the occasion required. She performed her part, indeed, with much graciousness, but Mrs. Bennet was satisfied, and soon afterwards ordered her carriage. Upon this signal, the youngest of her daughters put herself forward. The two girls had been whispering to each other during the whole visit, and the result of it was that the youngest should tax Mr. Bingley with having promised on his first coming into the country to give a ball at Netherfield. Lydia was a stout, well-grown girl of 15, with a fine complexion and good-humoured countenance, a favourite with her mother, whose affection had brought her into the public at an early age. She had high animal spirits, and a sort of natural self-consequence, which the attention of the officers, to whom her uncle's good dinners and her own easy manners recommended her, had increased to assurance. She was very equal, therefore, to address Mr. Bingley on the subject of the ball, and abruptly remind him of his promise, adding that it would be the most shameful thing in the world if he did not keep it. His answer to this sudden attack was delightful to his mother's ears. I am perfectly ready, I assure you, to keep my engagement, and when your sister is recovered, you shall, if you please, name the very day of the ball, but you would not wish to be dancing while she is ill. Lydia declared herself satisfied. Oh yes, it would be much better to wait till Jane was well, and by that time, most likely, Captain Carter would be at Meryton again. And when you have given your ball, she added, I insist on their giving one also. I shall tell Colonel Foster it will be quite a shame if he does not. It does that because it is cringe. I tell you, cringe. Yeah. Twitch is cringe. High animal spirits. Was she an owl? In a past life, maybe. Colonel Banana Foster. Mrs. Bennet and her daughters departed, and Elizabeth returned instantly to Jane, leaving her own and her relations' behaviour to the remarks of the two ladies and Mr. Darcy, the latter of whom, however, could not be prevailed on to join the censure of her, in spite of all Miss Bingley's witticisms on fine eyes. Ew, ew. Are they going to talk? Are they going to have a conversation? The next day passed much as the day before had done. Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley had spent some hours of the morning with the invalid, who continued through slowly to mend, and in the evening Elizabeth joined their party in the drawing-room. The loo table, however, did not appear. Mr. Darcy was writing, and Miss Bingley, seated near him, was watching the progress of his letter and repeatedly calling off his attention by messages to his sister. Mr. Hurst and Mr. Bingley were at piquet, and Mrs. Hurst was observing their game. Elizabeth took up some needlework, and was sufficiently amused in attending to what passed between Darcy and his companion. In the perpetual commendations of the lady, either on his handwriting, or on the evenness of his lines, or on the length of his letter, with the perfect unconcern with which her praises were received, formed a curious dialogue, and was exactly in unison with her opinion of each. How delighted Miss Darcy will be to receive such a letter! He made no answer. You write uncommonly fast. You are mistaken, I write rather slowly. How many letters you must have occasion to write in the course of a year! Letters of business, too! How odious I should think them! It is fortunate, then, that they fall to my lot instead of yours. Pray tell your sister that I long to see her. I have already told her so once by your desires. I am afraid that you do not like your pen. Let me mend it for you. I mend pens remarkably well. Thank you, but I always mend my own. How can you contrive to write so even? He was silent. Tell your sister I am delighted to hear of her improvement on the harp, and pray let her know that I am quite in raptures with her beautiful little designs for the table, and I think it indefinitely superior to Miss Grantley's. Will you give me leave to defer your raptures till I write again? At present I have not room to do them justice. Oh, it is of no consequence of yours. I shall see her in January. But do you always write such charmingly long letters to her, Mr. Darcy? They are generally long, but whether always charming is not for me to determine. It is a rule with me that a person who can write a long letter with ease cannot write ill. That will not do for a compliment to Darcy, Caroline, cried her brother, because he does not write with ease. He studies too much for words of 4 syllables. Do you not, Darcy? My style of writing is very different to yours. Oh, cried Miss Bingley, Charles writes in the most careless way imaginable. He leaves out half of his words and blots the rest. My ideas flow so rapidly that I have not time to express them, by which means my letters sometimes convey no ideas at all to my correspondents. Your humility, Mr. Bingley, said Elizabeth, must disarm reproof. Nothing more deceitful, said Darcy, than the appearance of humility. It is often only carelessness of opinion, and sometimes an indirect boast. Hello, Scarlet Silver Iron, welcome. Thank you for being on Twitch. So Victorians just sit around talking shit at each other all day. I mean, they didn't have the internet. If you can't talk shit on Twitter, you gotta do it in real life. And which of the two do you call my little recent piece of modesty? The indirect boast, for you are really proud of your defects in writing, because you consider them as proceeding from the rapidity of your thoughts and carelessness of execution, which, if not estimatable, you think at least highly interesting. The power of doing anything with quickness is always much praised by the possessor, and often without any attention to the imperfection of the performance. When you told Mrs. Bennet this morning that if you ever resolved on quitting Netherfield, you should have gone in 5 minutes, you meant it to be a sort of panegyric of compliment to yourself, and yet what is there so very laudable about a precipitance which must leave very necessary business undone, and can be of no real advantage to yourself or anyone else? Bro, you were just trying to show off. You are humble bragging. Nay, cried Bingley. Alright, we just have Twitter for that. The more things change. The more things change, the more we can bitch on the internet instead of at each other directly. Nay, cried Bingley. This is too much, to remember at night all the foolish things that were said in the morning, and yet, upon my honour, I believed that I was said of myself to be true, and I believe that it at this moment. At least, therefore, it did not assume the character of needless precipitance merely to show off before the ladies. Fuck you, I was actually being modest, he says. I dare say you believed it, and I am by no means convinced that you would be gone with such celerity. Your conduct would be quite as dependent on chance as that of any man I know, and if, as you were mounting your horse, a friend were to say, Bingley, you had better stay till next week, you would probably do it. You would probably not go, and, at another word, might stay a month. Oh, Mr. Bingley, says Mr. Darcy, you are a soft arse, and you just do what you're told. You have only proved by this, cried Elizabeth, that Mr. Bingley did not do justice to his own disposition. You have shown him off now much more than he did himself. I am exceedingly gratified, said Bingley, by your converting what my friend says into a compliment on the sweetness of my temper. But I am afraid you are giving it a turn that gentleman did by no means intend, for he would certainly think the better of me if, under such a circumstance, I were to give a flat denial, and ride off as fast as I could. Would Mr. Darcy... Again, we're going to translate as we go. So basically that one was like, well, congrats, Darcy, you made him sound actually really good and told me much more about him, despite you saying it was a humble brag and he shouldn't be talking about himself. Lol. And then he's like, yeah, he kind of did, but I think he would have rather I just ran to the hills, but yeah, he didn't. Would Mr. Darcy then consider the rashness of your intention as atoned by your obstinacy in adhering to it? Upon my word, I cannot exactly explain the matter. Darcy must speak for himself. And then she's like, is that really what Mr. Darcy means? And then he's like, well, you'll have to ask Darcy himself. You expect me to account for opinions which you chose to call mine, but which I have never acknowledged. You're putting words in my mouth. Allowing the case, however, to stand according to your representation, you must remember, Miss Bennet, that if the friend who is supposed to desire his return to the house, and the delay of his plan, has merely desired it, asked it without offering one argument in favour, if its propriety... Oh my god. Words! So, you're putting words in my mouth. What I'm saying is he's a soft git. To yield readily, easily, to the persuasion of a friend is no merit with you. To yield without conviction is no compliment to the understanding of either. You appear to me, Mr. Darcy, to allow nothing for the influence of friendship and affection. A regard for the requester would often make one readily yield to a request, without waiting for arguments to reason one into it. I am not particularly speaking of such a case as you have supposed about Mr. Bingley. We may as well wait, perhaps, till the circumstance occurs, before we discuss the discretion of his behaviour thereupon. But in general and ordinary cases between friend and friend, where one of them is desired by the other to change a resolution of no very great moment, should you think ill of that person for complying with the desire without waiting to be argued it? Brevity may be the soul of wit, but it's still fun hearing people use 20 words to call someone a git. I know, right? It's these long sentences that are crazy. It's like, where's my mouse? So we got a sentence here. So that's one sentence. This is still one sentence. This is an entire sentence. That is an entire sentence. And it starts with a but. Sentences theoretically should not start with a but at the start as well. So really that should have been part of this sentence, and this whole thing is a sentence. They did not have good grammar rules back then, that is for sure. And it's fucking hilarious, I love it. Mwah! 10 out of 10. Learning about historical grammar and how shit it was. But basically what they're saying here is, Mr. Darcy, maybe you're just a stubborn asshole. Because really, if a friend asks you something and it's not really that much of an issue at the time, why would you argue with it? Why would you need to be reasoned into it? Just be nice to your friend. It will not be advisable, before we proceed on this subject, to arrange rather more precision the degree of importance which is to appertain to this request, as well as the degree of intimacy subsiding between the parties. And now he's being an arse and being like, I need more details to this hypothetical now. By all means, cried Bingley, let us hear all the particulars, not forgetting their comparative height and size, for that will have more weight in the argument. And now they're taking the piss of Mr. Darcy and being like, well, if you want particulars, how about we have his height and size and shit? I'm sure that will make a detail thing. Miss Bennet, than you may be aware of. I assure you that if Darcy were not such a great tall fellow in comparison with myself, I should not pay him half so much deference. I declare I do not know a more awful object than Darcy on particular occasions, and in particular places, at his own house especially, and of a Sunday evening when he has nothing to do. Oh my god, that's hilarious! Okay, so say, and the only reason I think I would give him, like, all the real reason, I wouldn't need to be reasoned into things with Darcy, is because he's so tall! That's silly. I love that. That's so silly. Oh. Darcy smiled, but Elizabeth thought she could perceive that he was rather offended, and therefore checked her laugh. Miss Bingley warmly resented the indignity he had received in the expulsion with her brother for talking such nonsense. I see your design, Bingley, said his friend. You dislike an argument and want to silence this. Perhaps I do. Arguments are too much like disputes, and if you and Miss Bennet will defer yours till I am out of the room, I shall be very thankful, and then you may say whatever you like of me. Well, grammar rules are just guidelines. You may stray beyond those confines and still be alright. Regional dialects are still a thing. They are, but you also have to take in the fact that you still need to make it easy to read. And that tends to be the reason grammar exists. Because I'm struggling. I really have to focus when reading this, because run-on sentences and things like that, they're very hard to read, especially out loud. So, it's okay to change grammar rules. But they are rules for a reason. My coal patch has run its course. Oh no! It seems I must bring in new ore by train. Choo choo! Anyone go to Twitch? Lovely, that'd be great, thank you. So I guess I have no choice but to nuke the bugs. Nuke the bugs! I think that was a near miss in the footage. Ba 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 ba. What you ask, said Elizabeth, is no sacrifice on my side, and Mr. Darcy had much better finish his letter. Mr. Darcy took her advice and did finish his letter. When that business was over, he applied to Miss Bingley and Elizabeth for the indulgence of some music. Miss Bingley moved with alacrity to the pianoforte, and after a polite request that Elizabeth would lead the way, which the other as politely and more earnestly negatived, she seated herself. Mrs. Hurst sang with her sister, and while they were thus employed, Elizabeth could not help observing, as she turned over some music books that lay on the instrument, how frequently Mr. Darcy's eyes were fixed on her. She hardly knew how to suppose that she could be an object of admiration to so great a man, and yet that he should look at her because he disliked her was still more strange. She could only imagine, however, at last, that she drew his notice because there was something about her more wrong and reprehensible, according to his idea of right, than in any other person's presence. The superstition did not pain her. She liked him too little to care for his approbation. Nukes are expensive as hell. That's true. Yes, and so is filet mignon. That is also true. After playing some Italian songs, Miss Bingley varied the charm by a lively Scotch air, and soon afterwards Mr. Darcy, drawing near Elizabeth, said to her, "Do you not feel a great inclination, Miss Bennet, to seize the opportunity of dancing a reel?" She smiled, but made no answer. He repeated the question with some surprise at her silence. "Oh," said she, "I heard you before, but I could not immediately determine what to say in reply. You wanted me, I know, to say yes, that you might have the pleasure of despising my taste, but I always delight in overthrowing those kinds of schemes, and cheating a person of their premeditated contempt. I have, therefore, made up my mind to tell you that I do not want to dance a reel at all, and now despise me if you dare." Oh Lord, she's so sassy. Elizabeth's so sassy. We like Elizabeth. She's so sassy. He's just like, "Oh, I'm gonna go up to her, ask her if she wants to dance, and then when she says yes, I'm going to insult her." And she's just like, "No!" That noise was me throwing the middle finger. That's basically what she did. "Indeed, I do not dare." Elizabeth, having rather expected to affront him, was amazed by his gallantry. But there was a mixture of sweetness and archness in his manner which made it difficult for her to affront anybody, and Darcy had never been so bewitched by any woman as he was by her. He really believed that, were it not for the inferiority of her connections, he should be in some danger. Miss Bingley saw or suspected enough to be jealous, and her great anxiety for the recovery of her dear friend Jane received some assistance from the desire of getting rid of Elizabeth. She often tried to provoke Mr. Darcy into disliking her guest by talking of their supposed marriage and planning his happiness in such alliance. "I hope," said she, as they were walking together in the shrubbery the next day, "you will give your mother-in-law a few hints when this desirable event takes place, as to the advantage of holding her tongue, and, if you can compass it, to cure the younger girls of running after the officers, and, if I may mention so delicate a subject, endeavour to check that little something bordering on conceit and impertinence which your lady possesses." Oh my! Mrs. Bennet is starting to get jealous of the attention that Elizabeth is getting from Mr. Darcy. Oh my! Drama. No, stay where you are. Have you not anything else to propose for my domestic fealty? Oh, yes, do not let the portraits of your uncle and Aunt Phillips be placed in the gallery at Pemberley. Put them next to your great-uncle, the judge. They are in the same profession, as you know, only in different lines. As for your Elizabeth's picture, you must not attempt to have it taken, for what painter could do justice to those beautiful eyes? It would not be easy, indeed, to catch their expression, but their colour and shape, and the eyelashes are so remarkably fine, might be copied. At that moment they were met from another walk by Mrs. Hurst and Elizabeth herself. "I did not know that you intended to walk," said Miss Bingley in some confusion, lest they had been overheard. "You used us abominably ill," answered Mrs. Hurst, "running away without telling us you were coming out." Then, taking the disengaged arm of Mr. Darcy, she left Elizabeth to walk by herself. Oh shit, so she went out for a walk with the other lady, and then they both abandoned her and left with Mr. Darcy. What the fuck? The path just admitted 3. Mr. Darcy felt their rudeness and immediately said, "This walk is not wide enough for our party. We had better go into the avenue." But Elizabeth, who had not the least inclination to remain with them, laughingly answered, No, stay where you are. You are charmingly grouped, and appear to uncommon advantage. The picturesque would be spoiled by admitting a 4th. Goodbye." Darcy's like, "Oh no, it's fine, we could have another one." She's like, No, let the bitches be bitches, bye. I don't even want to hang out with you guys. Then she ran gaily off, rejoicing as she rambled about, in the hope of being home again in a day or 2. Jane was already so much recovered as to intend to leave her room in a couple of days that evening. Yay! Yay, yawn. The absolute brain opposite the yay and the yawn. Yawn indeed. Italian songs, oh boy, they're not listening to Adriel Cilentro. I don't imagine they'd sing that very well. When the ladies were moved after dinner, Elizabeth ran up to her sister, and seeing her well guarded from the cold, attended into the drawing room, where she was welcomed by her 2 friends with many professions of pleasure, and Elizabeth had never seen them so agreeable as they were during the hour which passed before the gentlemen appeared. Their powers of conversation were considerable. They could describe an entertainment with accuracy, relate an anecdote with humour, and laugh at their acquaintance with spirit. But when the gentleman entered, Jane was no longer the first object. Mrs. Bingley's eyes were instantly drawn towards Darcy, and she had something to say to him before he had advanced many steps. He addressed himself directly to Miss Bennet, with a polite congratulations. Mr. Hurt also gave her a slight bow, and said he was very glad, but diffuseness and warmth remained for Bingley's salutation. He was full of joy and attention. The first half-hour was spent in piling up the fire, lest she should suffer from the change of room, and she removed, at his desire, to the other side of the fireplace, that she might be farther from the door. He then sat down by her, and talked scarcely to anyone else. Elizabeth, at work in the opposite corner, saw it all with a great delight. Ah, she's just happy her sister has a nice guy. She's secured a wonderful man by the sounds of it. Adriano Celentano. Apologies, I did that real wrong. I did say that real wrong. When tea was over, Mr. Hurst reminded his sister-in-law of the card table, but in vain. She had obtained private intelligence that Mr. Darcy did not wish for cards, and Mr. Hurst soon found even his open petition rejected. She assured him that no one intended to play, and the silence of the whole party on the subject seemed to justify her. Mr. Hurst had, therefore, nothing to do but stretch himself in one of the sofas and go to sleep. Darcy took up a book. Miss Bingley did the same, and Mrs. Hurst, principally occupied in playing with her bracelets and rings, joined now and then in her brother's conversation with Miss Bennet. Miss Bingley's attention was quite as much engaged in watching Darcy's progress through his book as in reading her own, and she was perpetually either making some inquiry or looking at his page. She could not win him, however. To any conversation he merely answered her question and read on, at length quite exhausted by the attempt to be amused with her own book, which she had only chosen because it was the second volume of his. She gave a great yawn and said, "How pleasant it is to spend an evening this way! I declare, after all, there is no enjoyment like reading. How much sooner one tries of anything than of a book. When I have a house of my own, I shall be miserable if I have not an excellent library." Lol. Chat should totally open on Twitch on another tab and help it reach Twitch goals. Yes, they should, Jag. Thank you. Thank you. I love Miss Bingley. She's hilarious. She's like, "Pay attention to me, senpai! Mr. Darcy, senpai! Pay attention to me!" And he just does not like her whatsoever. She's like, "Fuck off. A woman after your own heart." No, she's just trying to show off for a man. That's the problem. She's a fake book girl. Fake book girl. Fake book girl. No one made any reply. She then yawned again, threw aside her book. See, exactly! She threw aside her book 2 seconds later when she didn't get any attention. And cast her eyes around the room in quest of some amusement. When hearing her brother mention a ball to Miss Bennet, she turned suddenly towards him and said, "By the by, Charles, are you really serious in mediating a dance in Netherfield? I would advise you, before you determine on it, to consult the wishes of the present party. I am much mistaken if there are not some among us whom a ball would rather be a punishment than a pleasure." "If you mean Darcy," cried her brother, "he may go to bed, if he chooses, before it begins. But as for the ball, it is quite a settled thing. As soon as Nicholas has made white soup enough, I shall send round my cards." I should like balls infinitely better, she replied, if they were carried on in a different manner. But there is something unsufferably tedious in the usual process of such a meeting. It would surely be more rational if conversation instead of dancing made the order of the day. Much more rational, my dear Caroline, I dare say, but it would not be near so much like a ball. Lol. Miss Bingley made no answer. She's just so trying to play up shit that Darcy I think we should talk at the ball rather than dance at the ball, because I know Mr. Darcy doesn't like to dance so much. He would rather talk to people. Yes, if I say this, then Mr. Darcy will clearly like me, of course. God damn, Mrs. Bingley, get your nose out of his arse. Stop kissing his boots. Miss Bingley made no answer, and soon afterwards got up and walked about the room. Her figure was elegant, and she walked well, but Darcy, at whom all of it was aimed, was still inflexibly studious. In the desperation of her feelings, she resolved on one effort more, and turning to Elizabeth, said, Miss Eliza Bennet, let me persuade you to follow my example, and take a turn about the room. I assure you it is very refreshing after sitting so long in one attitude. I love that just walking around the room is something that they do. The Victorians are so bored. Walking around the room is an activity. Elizabeth was surprised, but agreed to it immediately. Miss Bingley succeeded no less in the real object of her civility. Mr. Darcy looked up. Hey, my rival, get up, because if you get up, then my crush will look at me. She's a petty bitch. He was as much awake to the novelty of attention in that quarter as Elizabeth herself could be, and unconsciously closed his book. He was directly invited to join their party, but he declined it, observing that he could imagine but two motives for their choosing to walk up and down the room together, either of which motives his joining would interfere. What could he mean? She was dying to know what could be his meaning, and asked Elizabeth whether she could at all understand him. Not at all, was her answer, but depend on it, he means to serve on us, and our surest way of disappointing him would be to ask nothing about it. He wants them to ask, but she's like, no, we don't need to ask him anything. Leave Mr. Darcy alone, don't give him the attention. He's a troll, don't do it. These poor souls needed some FF14 at once, they really do. Narratively, that would blow their fucking minds. They'd also be able to understand Urianger a lot better than we do. They'd be like, this one's my favourite character. He speaks in proper English. Miss Bingley, however, was incapable of disappointing Mr. Darcy in anything, and persevered, therefore, in requiring an explanation of his two motives. Because Mr. Darcy wants to feel smart and explain himself. I have not the smallest objection to explaining them, said he, as soon as she allowed him to speak. You either choose this method of passing the evening because you are in each other's confidence, and have secret affairs to discuss, or because you are conscious that your fingers appear to the greatest advantage in walking. If the first, I should be completely in your way, and if the second, I can admire you much better as I sit by the fire. Oh, shocking! Cried Miss Bingley. I never heard anything so bit. How shall we punish him for such a speech? Nothing so easy, if you have but the inclination. So, Either you're going off to discuss things that I shouldn't hear, or I'm going to sit and watch your butts from here. Said Elizabeth. We can all plague and punish one another, tease him, laugh at him, intimidate as you are, but you must know how it is to be done. But upon my honour I do not. I do assure you that my intimacy has not yet taught me that. Tease, calmness of temper, and presence of mind, no, I feel he must defy us there. And as to laughter, we will not expose ourselves, if you please, by attempting to laugh without a subject. Mr. Darcy may hug himself. Mr. Darcy is not to be laughed at, cried Elizabeth. That is an uncommon advantage. And uncommon, I hope it will continue, for it would be a great loss to me to have many such acquaintances. I dearly love a laugh. Miss Bingley, said he, has given me credit for more than he can be, the wisest of best of men, nay, the wisest and best of their actions may be rendered ridiculous by a person whose first object in life is a joke. Certainly, replied Elizabeth. There are such people, but I hope I am not one of them. I hope I never ridicule what is wise or good. Follies and nonsense, whims and inconsistencies do divert me. I own and I laugh at them whenever I can, but these, I suppose, are precisely what you are without. A sass! Oh! So, let me translate into some modern English for you. So, he's teased them saying, well, I will just look at your asses from here. And then Mrs. Bingley's like, oh, that's rude! How could we get back at him for this, Elizabeth? And Elizabeth's like, oh, well, there's a lot of ways to get back at someone. But you'll have to, like, laugh at them, or intimidate them, blah, 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 blah. The sass on this lass is kicking thine ass. Yes, it is. And she's like, I don't know how to do that. And you can't laugh at Mr. Darcy. And he's like, yes, you can't laugh at Mr. Darcy because he ain't funny. Because he's a boring ass, basically. Perhaps that is not possible for anyone, but it has been the study of my life to avoid those weaknesses, which often expose a strong understanding to ridicule. And then he's like, well, I've tried to focus on the blade. I mean, I've tried to focus on not being funny because I don't like people making fun of me. So I pretend to be perfect the whole time. Such as vanity and pride. Yes, vanity is a weakness indeed, but pride, where there is a real superiority of mind, pride will be always under good regulation. Elizabeth turned away to hide a smile. Your examination of Mr. Darcy is over, I presume, said Miss Bingley, and I pray what is the result? I am perfectly convinced that by it that Mr. Darcy has no defect. He owns himself without disguise. No, said Darcy, I have made no such pretension. I have faults enough, but they are not, I hope, of understanding. My temper I dare not vouch for. It is, I believe, too little yielding. Certainly too little for the convenience of the world. I cannot forget the follies and vices of others so soon, and I ought not their offences against myself. My feelings are not puffed about with every attempt to move them. My temper would perhaps be called resentful. My good opinion, once lost, is lost forever. So then Miss Bingley is like, oh, so you poked at him a little bit. What do you think? And she's like, well, he's perfect, obviously. Completely perfect. He's totally got us pulled over. And he's like, no, I'm not perfect. I'm a resentful, petty bitch. That is a failing indeed, cried Elizabeth. Implacable resentment is a shade of a character, but you have chosen to your fault as well. I really cannot laugh at it. You are safe from me. And she's like, yeah, that is a fault. However, it's a fault I can get behind. There is, I believe, in every disposition a tendency to some particular evil, a natural defect which is not even the best education can overcome. And your defect is the propensity to hate everybody. And he's like, yes, it is everyone. Everyone has a fault, and I mean that's mine. And then she's like, okay, so your fault is that you just hate everyone. You just literally hate everyone. And yours, he replied for a smile, is to willfully misunderstand them. And yours is to twist everyone's words for your amusement. Correct. Do let us have a little music, cried Miss Bingley, tired of a lot of conversation in which she had no share. Louisa, you will not mind my waking Mr. Hurst? Her sister made not the smallest objection, and the pianoforte was opened, and Darcy, after a few moments of recollection, was not sorry for it. He began to feel the danger of paying Elizabeth too much attention. Yeah, Miss Bingley got mad that she wasn't the centre of Darcy's attention and decided to get the music on. And if anything, that saved Darcy, because Darcy's realised, oh shit, she can keep up with me, and I don't like that. I'm gonna have to quadruple my Red Sucker production at this rate. Good luck with that! Oh lord, this is fucking hilarious. Oh my god. And he smells. He do. In consequence of an agreement between the sisters, Elizabeth wrote the next morning to her mother to beg that the carriage might be sent for them in the course of the day. But Mrs. Bennet, who had calculated on her daughter's remaining in Netherfield till the following Tuesday, which was exactly finished Jane's week, could not bring herself to receive them with pleasure before. Ma'am, please come get us. No, you'll stay exactly a week until you have a husband. Goodbye, said Mother. Her answer, therefore, was not preposterous at the least, at least not to Elizabeth's wishes, for she was impatient to get home. Mrs. Bennet sent them word that they could not possibly have the carriage before Tuesday, and in her postscript it was added that if Mr. Bingley and his sister pressed them to stay longer, she would spare them very well. And if your future husbands want you to stay longer, I will not send the carriage. Love you, kisses. Against staying longer, however, Elizabeth was positively resolved, nor did she much expect it would be asked, and fearful, on the contrary, of being considered as intruding themselves needlessly long, she urged Jane to borrow Mr. Bingley's carriage immediately, and at length it was settled that their original design of leaving Netherfield that morning should be mentioned, and the request made. The communication excited many professions of concern, and enough was said of wishing them to stay, at least till the following day, to work on Jane. Until the morrow, their going was deferred. Ah. So they tried to get out, but Jane's a softie and said they'll stay. Miss Bingley was then sorry that she had proposed the delay, for her jealousy and dislike of one sister much exceeded her affection for the other. The master of the house heard with real sorrow that they were to go soon, and repeatedly tried to persuade Miss Bennet that it would not be safe for her, that she was not enough recovered, but Jane was firm where she felt herself to be right. To Mr. Darcy, it was welcome intelligence. Elizabeth had been at Netherfield too long. She attracted him more than he liked, and Miss Bingley was uncivil to her, and more teasing than usual to himself. He wisely resolved to be particularly careful that no sign of admiration should now escape him. Nothing that could elevate her with hope of influencing his felicity. Sensible that, if such an idea had been suggested, his behaviour during the last day must have material weight in confirming or crushing it. Steady to his purpose, he scarcely spoke 10 words to her throughout the whole of Saturday, and though they were at one time left by themselves for half an hour, he adhered most conscientiously to his book, and would not even look at her. On Sunday, after morning service, the separation so agreeable to all took place. Miss Bingley's civility to Elizabeth increased at last very rapidly, as well as her affection for Jane, and when they parted, after assuring the latter of the pleasure it would always give her to see her either at Longbourn or Netherfield, and embracing her most tenderly, she even shook hands with the former, Elizabeth took leave of the whole party in the liveliest spirits. Big deal, I scarcely speak 10 words every day. If I'm not streaming, then I do get like that. Now, they were not welcomed home very cordially by their mother. Mrs. Bennet wondered at their coming, and thought them very wrong to give so much trouble, and was sure Jane would have caught cold again. Why didn't you go out to catch a cold again, Jane? My gosh, why are you still not ill? Mother. But their father, though very laconic in his expression of pleasure, was really glad to see them. He had felt their importance in the family circle. The evening conversation, when they were all assembled, had lost much of its animation, and almost all its sense, by the absence of Jane and Elizabeth. They found Mary, as usual, deep in study through base and human nature, and had some new extras to admire and some new observations of threadbare morality to listen to. Catherine and Lydia had informed them of a different sort. Much had been done, and much had been said in the regiment since the preceding Wednesday. Several of the officers had dined lately with their uncle, and a private had been flogged, and it had actually been hinted that Colonel Foster was going to be married. Oh my! Colonel Foster's going to be married. I hope, my dear, said Mr. Bennet to his wife as they were at breakfast next morning, that you have ordered a good dinner today, because I have reason to expect an addition to our family. Who do you mean, my dear? I know of nobody that is coming, I am sure, unless Charlotte Lucas should happen to call in, and I hope my dinners are good enough for her. I do not believe she often sees such at home. The person of whom I speak is a gentleman and a stranger. Mrs. Bennet's eyes sparkled. A gentleman and a stranger? Is it Mr. Bingley? I am sure. Why, Jane, you never dropped a word of this, you sly thing. Well, I am sure I shall be extremely glad to see Mr. Bingley. But, good Lord, how unlikely! There is not a bit of fish to be got today. Lydia, my love, ring the bell. I must speak to Hill this moment. It is not Mr. Bingley, said her husband. It is a person whom I never saw in the whole course of my life. This roused a general astonishment, as he had the pleasure of being eagerly questioned by his wife and 5 daughters at once. After amusing himself for some time with their curiosity, he is such an ass! Dad's such a troll! He's just like, haha, I'm just gonna tease you a little bit and then not tell you the thing. Dad! Why are you such a troll, Dad? Why are you like this? After amusing himself some time with their curiosity, he thus explained. About a month ago I received this letter. About a fortnight ago I answered it, for I thought that it a case of some delicacy and requiring early attention. It is from my cousin, Mr. Collins, who, when I am dead, may turn you all out of this house as soon as he pleases. Oh, my dear, cried his wife, I cannot bear to hear that mention. Pray do not talk of that odious man. I do not think it is the hardest thing in the world that your estate should be entailed away from your own children, and I am sure if I had been you, I should have tried long ago to do something or other about it. Jane and Elizabeth attempted to explain to her the nature of an entail. They had often attempted it before, but it was subject on which Mrs. Bennet was beyond reach of reason, and she continued to rail bitterly against the cruelty of setting an estate away from a family of 5 daughters, in favour of a man who nobody cared anything about. She's right, though! Hi, Boris, welcome! She's right! It certainly is a most inquisitive affair, said Mr. Bennet, and nothing can clear Mr. Collins from the guilt of inheriting Longbourn. But if you will listen to his letter, you may perhaps be a little softened by his manner of expressing himself. No, that I am sure I shall not, and I think it was very impertinent of him to write to you at all, and very hypocritical. I hate such false friends, and why could not he keep on quarrelling with you, as his father did before him? Why, indeed, does he seem to have some filial scruples on his head? You will hear. Hunsford, near West Ham, Kent, 15th of October. Dear Sir, the disagreement subsiding between yourself and my late honoured father always gave me much uneasiness, and since I have had the misfortune to lose him, I have frequently wished to heal the breach, but for some time I kept back by my own doubts, fearing lest it might seem disrespectful to his memory for me to be on good terms with anyone with whom it had always pleased him to be at variance. There, Mrs. Bennet, my mind, however, is now made up on the subject, for, having received ordination at Easter, I have been fortunate as to be distinguished by the patronage of the Right Honourable Lady Catherine de Bure, widow of Sir Lewis de Bure, whose bounty and benefice has preferred me to the valuable rectory of this parish, where it shall be my earnest endeavour to deem myself with grateful respect towards her ladyship, and be ever ready to perform those rites and ceremonies which are instituted by the Church of England. As a clergyman, moreover, I feel it my duty to promote and establish the blessing of peace in all families within the reach of my influence, and on those grounds I flatter myself that my present overtures of goodwill are highly commendable, and that the circumstances of my being next in entail of Longbourn estate will be kindly overlooked on your side, and not lead you to reject the offered olive branch. I cannot be otherwise that concerned at being the means of injuring your amiable daughters, and beg leave to apologize for it, as well as to assure you of my readiness to make them every possible amends, but of this hereafter, if you should have no objection to receive me into your house, I propose myself the satisfaction of waiting on you and your family Monday, November 18th, by 4 o'clock, and shall probably trespass on your hospitality till Saturday se'nnight following, which I cannot do without any inconvenience, as Lady Catherine is far from objecting to my occasional absence on Sunday, provided that some other clergyman is engaged to the duty of the day. I remain, dear sir, with respectful complaint, compliments to your lady and daughters. Your well-wisher and friend, William Collins. So, bro, our dad had beef with you, and I'm really sorry about that. I'm gonna go be a priest soon, and I want to put my best foot forward, and I'm gonna try put it in. Please don't think about the fact that I am getting your estate at the end of it. That's got nothing to do with this. And I'm coming round for dinner. Bye. Summary. At 4 o'clock, therefore, we may expect this peacemaking gentleman, said Mr. Bennet, as he folded up the letter. He seemed to be a most conscientious and polite young man, upon my word, and, I doubt, will prove a valuable acquaintance, especially if Lady Catherine should be so indulged as to let him come to us again. Oh, he's also found a rich waifu. That is also another one. There is some sense in what he says about the girls, however, and if he is disposed to make them any amends, I shall not be the person to discourage him. Though it is difficult, said Jane, to guess in what way he can make us the atonement he thinks our due. The wish is certainly to his credit. Elizabeth was chiefly struck with his extraordinary deference for Lady Catherine, and his kind intention of christening, marrying, and burying his parishioners, whether it were required. He must be an oddity, I think, said she. I could not make him out. There is something very pompous in his style, and what he meant by apologizing for being next in tail. We cannot suppose he would help it, if he could. Can he be a sensible man, sir? No, my dear, I think not. I have great hopes of finding him quite the reverse. There is a mixture of civility and self-importance in his letter, which promises well. I am impatient to see him. What's skibbity good looking? Pride and Prejudice is skibbity good looking, Mr. President. Welcome. 1 second. Come on, mouse. Come back. Come back. Yay, mouse. Ba, 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 ba. Ba da ba da ba da ba 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 da ba da ba da ba 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 da ba da. Sorry, I was just checking something. To Catherine and Lydia, neither the letter nor its writer were any degree interesting. It was next to impossible that their cousin should come in a scarlet coat, and it was now some weeks since they had received pleasure from the society of a man in any other colour, for, as their mother, Mr. Collins's letter had done away much of her ill will, and she was preparing to see him with a degree of composure which astonished her husband and daughters. Mr. Collins was punctual to his time, and was received with great politeness by the whole family. Mr. Bennet, indeed, said little, but the ladies were ready enough to talk, and Mr. Collins seemed neither in need of encouragement nor inclined to be silent himself. He was a tall, heavy-looking young man of 25. His air was grave and stately, and his manners were very formal. He had not been long seated before he complimented Mrs. Bennet on having so fine a family of daughters, and he had heard much of their beauty, but that, in this instance, fame had fallen short of the truth, and added that he did not doubt her seeing them all in due time, well disposed of in marriage. Disposed of in marriage. That's a hell of a sentence, isn't it? I will dispose of my daughter with marriage. God. This gallantry was not much to the taste of some of his hearers, but Mrs. Bennet, who quarrelled with no compliments, answered most readily, "You are very kind, sir. I am sure I wish with all my heart it may prove, for else they will be destitute enough Things are settled so oddly. You allude, perhaps, to the entail of this estate. Ah, sir, I do indeed. It is a grievous affair to my poor girls, you must confess. Not that I mean to find fault with you for such things. I know are all chances in the world. There is no knowing how estates will go when once they come to be entailed. I am very sensible, madame, of the hardship to my fair cousins, and could say much on the subject, but that I am cautious of appearing forward and precipitate, but I can assure the young ladies that I have come prepared to admire them. At present I will not say more, but perhaps when we are better acquainted. He was interrupted by a summons to dinner, and the girls smiled at each other. They were not the only object of Mr. Collins' admirations. The hall, the dining room, and all its furniture were examined and praised, and his commendations of everything would have touched Mrs. Bennet's heart, but for the mortifying supposition of his viewing it all as his own future property. The dinner, too, in its turn, was highly admired, and he begged to know which of his fair cousins the excellence of its cookery was owing, but he... Oh lordy. Sorry, the football is happening. There's a lot of screaming outside. Good lord. And that her daughters had nothing to do in the kitchen. He begged pardon for having displeased her. In a softened tone she declared herself not at all offended, but he continued to apologize for about a quarter of an hour. It's barely audible. That's good. I'm glad it's not too loud for you guys, but good lord, is it loud? At least the it's coming home screaming isn't happening yet. Out of curiosity, I'm gonna check the scores just out of curiosity. What were they screaming for? Did we just score, or is it over? England versus Spain. Let's have a look. Oh, come on, mouse. Come on, no! My mouse has decided to run out of battery. 1 second. It's dark in my room, 'cause it's gotten dark outside. And I didn't turn on my lights. And I can't find the wire that charges my battery. So I'm gonna have to get up and turn my lights on. Oh, what did I do with it? This one is it. I don't think it was loud enough for it to be a win. Has it gone to penalties? That's gotta be it. England versus Spain's score. Let's have a look. Oh, come on. Why are you not like Google? I wanna see it. I wanna see it. Ba, 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 ba. It's 1-1 apparently. Interesting. But you know what it actually is? It's 1-1 and time to end the stream. It's gonna be a loud evening for me, that's for sure. We are 21% of the way through Pride and Prejudice. I am doing a good job at reading this. I know I stumble a little bit, but its language is quite difficult, but I think I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty proud of myself for this. And thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone who lurked. Thank you anyone in the chat. Thank you to anyone who watches the VOD. Thank you everyone who hopped over and made sure Twitch had good numbers. Hopefully. Once this one had a good average in the end, and we get affiliate soon. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Speaking hard. Speaking be hard. Speaking be very hard. And reading good is also very hard. If you have not already, I would highly appreciate it if you're on YouTube, if you would leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you are on the Twitch, if you could follow the channel, that would be lovely. I would appreciate it. And if you have not already, if you were not one of those blessed people who got a membership today, then you could just pay for it yourself if you really wanted. That would be great. And you would get emotes, exclusive streams, Discord channel, and merch discounts. If you don't fancy the membership on YouTube, if you're more of a Twitch person but you still want to support in a monthly way, there is the Patreon where you can get short stories, exclusive streams, merch discounts, and free books. You will have to look at the exclusive streams on YouTube, though. I only stream them on YouTube, but I also have the VODs on there as well. So you can catch up on all those lovely SCP ones I've done before. There's also the kofi, where you can just throw money at me for no reason. There's also small audiobooks on there, small little short story audiobooks. And last but not least, there is the merch store on my personal website, where you can buy ebooks, first edition copies of my books, bookmarks, key rings, t-shirts, and a notebook, and even a very soft pillow with my chibi on, and a sticker roulette of all those lovely emotes that a bunch of you unlocked today. And that, I will be back tomorrow, probably with some more game dev and Rempy. And that, yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got for you. It was a good stream. Lord, Miss Elizabeth is so sassy. Miss Bennett is so sassy. This has been actually really fun. I wasn't sure if I would actually enjoy this book, but I am actually enjoying it. It's really good. I will see you guys tomorrow. I had fun. I hope you had fun. This has been Brandy Smith, Life in the Forbidden Library. Goodbye.